my name's Lynnie Carson. I've been asked to introduce the videos to my songs about climate change. The first is Greta, self-explanatory, it's about Greta Thunberg, and the second is Weaving Water, which is a song that was written about the fast fashion industry. For the Greta song, we produced an animated video to try and get kids and young people interested in climate change through Greta, using her as a vehicle. I also wanted to try and raise awareness of COP26, which should have happened last year but was pushed back to this year because of COVID. I see that as a positive thing because it gave us more time to try and get more people in Scotland interested in the fact that this huge conference was coming to Glasgow. And I speak from Glasgow at this moment as Greta is here in our fair city just now, which I'm so excited about, and I hope that this COP is the most meaningful yet. In a lot of ways it's the COP to end all COPs. We simply have to act now. The music video, you'll see, charts Greta's journey up until now and looks at some of the appalling abuse that she's been given over the years. The second song, Weaving Water, was commissioned by Rig Arts for a documentary that they were doing on fast fashion. And so-called fast fashion has often the more household term of sweatshops. Sweatshops produce cheap clothing that's disposable for many high street brands in the Western world. 85 to 90% of people who work in sweatshops are women, and they are mainly all of colour. And oftentimes people ask me what they can do to get involved in climate change, and I'm exactly like everybody else out there, terrified of the consequences of it, but often not quite sure where to start. So I thought I would read out a few things that I've picked up along the way. So stop shop, this would be to stop buying from the big high street brands that don't look after their workers who work in their textiles factories. Don't buy anything new, try it for a year, swap your clothes, go to charity shops, and once you get into the swing of it, it really is quite easy to do, and it saves you a fortune. Vote for change, that's pretty self-explanatory as well. Read and educate yourself, and if you can, change banks, bank ethically. Talk to friends and family as well. On the education part of it, what I've started to do is to read the IPCC reports, just like Greta says, believe the scientists, and also Penguin have just released a wonderful collection of books called Green Ideas. It's 20 small books by environmental writers and thinkers, which has given me a really much better understanding and an overview of why climate change has come around and what we can do about it. And more importantly, the more I learn, the more hope I get that we can do something about it. I've also been asked to talk about how the arts impacts climate change, and I think the best way it does that is it focuses people's attention in a way that they hopefully enjoy, and it hopefully helps to get people on board who perhaps weren't interested in climate change before. I hope you enjoy the songs, and I especially hope you enjoy the videos. Weaving Water has some amazing dance and choreography in it. As I say, as I've already said, I hope COP26 is the most impactful yet. And here's to a better world.
tell them your humanity outweighs the hate.
My message is that we'll be watching you.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean.
Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying.
Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We're in the beginning of a mass extinction. And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight. You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency, but no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe them.
If you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you'd be evil, and that I refuse to believe, 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 and that I refuse to believe.
Leaving water wasting not. Do you really need that new top? Go and ask yourself, could it have been swapped? Can we challenge the idea it must be bought? Possessions cannot fill the gap, nor can you pour from an empty cup. Have you ever tried filling yourself up? Retail therapy, I guess it's not helping you to better days. Can we find another way where we put nature first? Leaving water wasting not. Do you really need that thing you bought? Will it hide in the wardrobe gathering dust till you have a clear out as you must, just to make room for new shiny things? They won't bring you happiness. You gotta fill yourself inside happiness resides. 'Cause when the birds sing, that's a beautiful thing. And stop the tails ringing. 'Cause when the birds sing, that's a beautiful thing. And stop the tails ringing.
So fast fashion is the current global dominant culture that we have with our clothing, and the relationships we have with our clothes. Fast fashion is what defines that currently. So fast fashion is just this throwaway culture, and it's about kind of overproduction, overconsumption and disposability of clothes. And it's a very perpetuating cycle from how we create too many clothes and then we buy too many clothes, so we dispose of too many clothes, which creates really damaging impacts for the environment.
So the environmental impact from fast fashion is pretty significant. In fact, the fashion industry itself contributes to 10% of global carbon dioxide emissions, therefore having an impact on climate change. But it's not just its impact on climate change, there are other environmental impacts because of the water that goes into making clothing and also the chemicals used in the dyeing processes. These chemicals are toxic to human health, and as a consequence the freshwater systems in the countries that manufacture these products are being polluted.
There's an organisation we work with in England called WRAP, Waste and Resources Action Programme, and in 2011 they said that by value the UK imports far greater volumes of apparel than it exports, with 75% of imports from non-EU markets. So the largest imports were from Hong Kong, China, India and Bangladesh. So really our love of fast fashion is negatively impacting those countries where they are having to use all the resources and are having a high carbon footprint producing all this stuff that we're buying.
When we go to buy, say, a simple t-shirt, it may cost as cheap now as a couple of pounds. We don't realise that, just to make that one t-shirt, it's like about 2,700 litres of water just to make that t-shirt. So we have problems like in the Middle East where you have the Aral Sea, which has just been taken of all its water resource. The people's livelihood that live there, in a lot of these countries, they're really hot countries where people need water more than we do here. They need to drink and cook, and we're taking that water to make t-shirts for the global north.
Roughly 118,000 tonnes of clothing and 25,000 tonnes of shoes and bags are bought every year in Scotland, which is huge. And actually, when you compare us to the rest of Europe, I reckon consumption of new clothes is estimated to be higher in the UK than any other European country. So 26.7 kilograms per person. Which compares to 16.7 in Germany, 16 in Denmark, 14.5 in Italy, 14 in Netherlands and 12.5 in Sweden. So we really are bad. And I don't know why that is. That would be quite an interesting comparison to look at.
So when we talk about sustainable fashion, we often look at the environmental side of it, and that's what the big brands use to greenwash and say they're sustainable. But sustainability also includes the social side. Social sustainability is just as important as environmental sustainability, and some of the biggest issues with that are the exploitative working conditions for the garment workers that make our clothes. And these people are in developing countries such as Bangladesh, or more generally we talk about the global south. And basically the drive for profit that drives fast fashion, that leads to overproduction, just creates intense pressure on suppliers to get product made as quickly as possible and for as cheap as possible, and this just creates really destructive working environments for the people at the bottom of the chain, and that's just not ethical.
We can trace this back to 1600s, 1700s and to empire, and the way in which the colonial powers in Europe spread their influence throughout the world. And in doing so, they created what has been referred to as a core and periphery model of global society. So we have one part of the world which is producing a lot of goods, and another part of the world which is consuming a lot of goods. So the roots of what we might call slave labour today really go back to the essence of empire.
You hear a lot, you know, that, well, actually the customer wants cheaper clothes. I think the customer doesn't want, they're not demanding cheaper clothes, but companies are using that as an excuse to produce cheaper clothes, but then it's putting more pressure on people that make our clothes. This is where education is so important, because the more people learn about the detrimental effects that, you know, our simple purchases can have, people want to do good, you know. Nobody, it's just that we don't actually realise with fast fashion, you know, some of the effects that it has, and once we kind of know, people change, you know. There's a great film that I like to show, and it's on YouTube, and it's basically there's Fashion Evolution in Germany had created this vending machine and put it in the middle of a street in Berlin, and it had they were selling €2 t-shirts in the vending machine, so you could go up and it had a big sign, €2 t-shirt, and so, you know, people were going over, and then when they put their €2 into the slot, it shows how the garment was made and who made their clothes, who made that t-shirt. And then at the end of the film, they had the option to still buy that t-shirt or donate that €2. And of course, everybody donated the €2, because actually when you know what, you know, the detrimental effects are, or when you see the people who make your clothes, it makes all the difference, and you can unsee what you've seen.
So the essence to trying to solve this issue, not just for garment workers, but for any kind of workers that are stuck in this predicament, is to have a sense of unionisation, to give workers a legal standing, to have something like a minimum wage in place, and also to have a real concerted global effort to reduce global economic inequalities.
I think one of the biggest challenges with sustainable fashion is that people still don't understand what sustainable fashion means, and there's a lot of conflict around it. It's not a well-defined term, there's a lot of ambiguity there, and if we all want to work together to create a more sustainable future, a sustainable fashion transformation, then we need to be on the same page, and we need to understand what the issues are and how we can all play a role in that.
We're a global movement who have come together. We have a team here across Scotland. In fact, we have teams in Dundee, Aberdeen, Glasgow and Edinburgh. We basically campaign for change within the fashion industry. We want to see a better industry. We want to see the industry do good. A lot of what we do is we educate and we create workshops, we work with local designers in Scotland, we promote the work that they do and the sustainable aspects of what they do.
Regine is a unisex workwear brand. We create jackets and accessories all from second-hand or pre-worn denim. So everything is a complete one-off. No two garments will ever be the same. We also launched our repair shop. So we're just trying to further our efforts to keep, to help consumers keep good quality clothing out of landfill, basically. Yeah, there's so much good quality denim in circulation, so why not use that rather than growing new cotton and producing new fabric, but like, what's the point when there's so much of it? And people go through jeans like nobody's business, and they're, you know, people just like to update their wardrobe all the time. It's like, if you get one good pair of jeans, like, people don't see the value in making clothing last a long time. They have to update everything. I think that's where we're going wrong. We need to sort of appreciate what we've got, and yeah.
So one of the biggest issues with sustainable fashion is that people think sustainable fashion is just buying high-priced, good quality garments that were made in a sustainable way, whatever that means. But beyond that, you know, there's so much more than that people can do. So when we look beyond just buying kind of better made clothes, you can buy second-hand from charity shops, thrift shops. Clothes swaps are a great way to connect with new people who also share your interests, but so you're not buying new, you're not consuming new clothes, you're just swapping what already exists. So that's another good way to, on an individual level, how you can have an impact.
Revolve is a project funded by the Scottish Government's Climate Challenge Fund. We've been on the go for about 5 years now. The aim of the project is to reduce the amount of clothing and textile waste going to landfill in our communities, and also to encourage people in our local communities to cut down on the amount of clothing and textile they consume, that they buy. The reason for this is because of the impact that clothing and textile consumption and waste has on the environment, and we want to educate people in our communities about that. But as well as just telling them about it, we also want to give them the actual practical means to do something about it. So we have 3 permanent swap shops in local high streets, one in Hamilton, one in Rutherglen and one in Cambuslang. And we ask people to bring in clothing that they no longer want, that doesn't fit them. You bring it in and we give you points for it. Those points then become your currency, and you use those points to then take things away in the shop that you do actually want, that you do like. The reason that we're asking people to do that is if everybody swapped instead of buying new, it would obviously cut down the amount of clothing consumption that was actually going on. Just because you no longer wear something, you no longer love something, it doesn't mean that there's not life left in it, and that someone else could get use out of it.
Another solution that we talk about is repairing skills and mending, because in the past people, you know, you just grew up and you learnt how to sew, and I can't sew. I always feel a bit of a fraud talking about sustainable fashion when I like don't know how to sew, but that's just the reality. And you know, you can learn how to sew, but you need to have the privilege of time and access to resources and a sewing machine or a needle and thread at the very least to be able to do that.
We also run workshops. The thinking behind the workshops is to hopefully encourage people to see their textile as a resource rather than rubbish. So if something is past its wear life, it's maybe worn out, it's faded, there are actually other things that you can do with that. Don't throw that in the bin, don't landfill it, but learn how to make it into something else, learn how to do something else with it. We also want people just to learn how to do basic mends and repairs in their clothing. A lot of people nowadays, because clothing is so accessible, because it is so cheap, rather than taking up a hem, fixing a zip, fixing a button, we just discard that item and go and buy a new one. But at our workshops we want to show people how to make those fixes, how to make those repairs, so that they actually get life out of the clothing that they have, and they're not going out and buying things when something is perfectly repairable.
I think another key thing is actually just to keep an open mind and do some research yourself, and you know, educate yourself on the issues, but you don't have to do it alone. So look for spaces where people do come together to talk about these issues. That's what we're trying to do at Sustainable Fashion Scotland, is create spaces for people to connect. In July 2020, Sustainable Fashion Scotland launched our monthly community calls. So these are held on the last Thursday of every month, and it creates a space and opportunity for the community to come together, connect, learn about a topic that's kind of relevant, and find out about what's happening in Scotland in sustainable fashion. We get one or two people from the community to lead these discussions. So they tell us a bit about their work, so we get to learn about what they're doing, kind of behind the scenes. And then we have a more open discussion where everyone is invited to contribute and speak up if they want to. But you're also welcome to come along and just listen in the background. That's absolutely fine.
The Fix and Fashion project aims to support the people of Inverclyde to reduce their carbon footprint and to also raise awareness of the environmental impacts of the fashion and textile industry. Since April last year, myself and another textile artist, Susan McInnes, have been teaching 3 different textile workshops. My role is to facilitate textile workshops by teaching practical skills through step-by-step tutorials, how-to videos and a weekly Zoom session. A few tips to become more sustainable would be to buy less but buy better quality clothing. Always think twice before you throw that item away, because you could donate it, it could be recycled in one of the recycling bins, you could repair it yourself with a repair technique, looking at visible mending, and even making that garment into something else. So that kind of upcycling process. And you could even, when you are buying garments, could you buy them second hand? Could you swap or rent a garment as well? So there is a lot of different things that we could slowly put into our everyday.